Good evening, everyone. It's Necro Thursday. That means it's time for the Necromaniacs Horror Podcast. How's it going, Mike?
It is going well. What's up, everybody? As Mike said, you're listening to Necromaniacs Podcast, coming at you every single Thursday. It is the beginning of April as we're recording this. Spring is officially here. Pretty nice weekend in New York City. How was your Jersey weekend, Mike?
Well, I've been kind of in and out of Jersey, going between Jersey and my parents' house in Westchester, Putnam County area, the Hudson Valley, let's say, in New York State. So, yeah, the weather's been beautiful. Today was a great day. It's spring. And what I do every spring is I break out Neurosis Times of Grace, and I run that album. And it's just that's always been such a spring record for me. I think because it came out, I think, in May. So, it's always been like part of my spring ritual, I guess, is listening to that record and enjoying the weather and that kind of thing.
That's cool. Yeah, I every week, it's that record label on the West Coast that Wolves in the Throne Room is on. Oh, Southern Lord. Southern Lord sends out an email every week if you've ever, bought something on Bandcamp from them or ordered from them or whatever. And they do these Bandcamp Friday deals, and everything is like, they'll pick like 4 random releases, and they'll all be like $1 on Bandcamp.
Wow. Okay.
But this week in particular, this past Friday in particular, they had a Wolves in the Throne Room record that was celebrating its anniversary, and that was only $1. And it reminded me that, like, Wolves in the Throne Room kind of remind me of spring music. This one was Black Cascade. They put out for only $1, which is a fucking great record. I'm a Wolves in the Throne Room fan. I been listening to them since I believe the very first record 20 years ago, plus whenever the hell that came out. But yeah, they kind of remind me of spring a little bit. But also on the music front, I discovered a band from Canada called Homefront. Have you heard them?
No, I have not heard of them.
They sound like something from like 1980, like post-punk,
okay.
Like really, really cool, interesting stuff going on. They have like 2 releases out, and a friend of mine told me about them and said, Mike, you're going to like this band a lot. And that friend was correct. So I immediately bought both of their releases. One is called Games of Power, and the other is called Think of the Lie on Bandcamp for, $6-7 a piece or whatever.
Homefront.
And then I saw that Sorry State Records is put out the vinyl, and I grabbed those. It's really cool that, like, look, I'm going to be 50, and I know a lot of people my age do not digest new music in the way that I digest new music, whereas I'm extremely open to it. And if I like it, I buy it. Like, I'm just, one of those, supporters. But this was a band that was like, okay, my friend was right. And I immediately fucking grabbed it, Homefront from Canada. Some of it sounds like The Cure. Some of it sounds like, Gang of Four. Some of it is, it sounds like very late 70s, early 80s, and it was recorded now, like one of those kind of things. I think you would dig it.
I'm gonna check it out. When we wrap this up, I'm gonna definitely check that out for sure.
Yeah, I think some listeners would dig it as well. And that's kind of, spring type music for me too. A lot of that sound, I don't know why, it kind of hits with the spring for me. I don't know.
I think I'm ready for spring, man. Yeah, I'm ready to, like, for a change. The winter, everything's been so bleak and brutal in the last few months. It's just, I'm ready for something good to happen, for a change.
I hear you, man. I hear you. A lot of fucking shows coming up. If you're a fan of heavy music, Jesus, everybody's on tour. I'm going to see our friends in Black Anvil on Wednesday, Mike, with Enslaved, and
all right.
That's playing New York City. Me and Stella are going to check that out. And then I think the week after, the Morbid Angel tour hits New York, and then in early May, the Obituary Immolation tour, and then there's Phrenolith, a Dead Congregation, playing in the middle of April at Vitus. I'm going to go to that. And there's just so much happening, man. If you like, death metal, black metal, and heavy music.
Well, there's also the big Emperor show too coming up in the
Yes,
later in the
this
spring,
summer.
and
Yeah. And
Goat
Sisters of Mercy.
and I Hate God coming through town.
Oh yeah, that's right. They're on the road.
Yeah.
Sisters of Mercy are coming. I mean, my poor bank account, Mike Hill. My poor bank account.
Yeah, I last few weeks I've been kind of preoccupied with family stuff, so I need to like figure out which of these shows I'm going to. I think the Dead Congregation thing might be pretty much sold out at this point, though. Unfortunately,
I think they have minimal tickets left. It's like a Wednesday show, but Stella and I are definitely going.
Yeah.
I got the tickets a few weeks ago. And there's yet another show at Vitus in May. Spectral Wound is playing, I think, Memorial Day weekend. We're going to go to that.
Yeah. That band's great.
No shortage.
Yeah. We played with Spectral Wound in Providence a few years ago. They're a great band, nice guys. I really like them a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I looking forward to seeing if they're going to do any new music or another new record. But that last record from a year or so ago is fucking fantastic. And then, like on the viewing front, I caught up on my South Park, Mike.
South
Park is yes, this season has been fucking hilarious. They're doing really short seasons though. They're like 6 episodes, which is kind of a bummer as opposed to their much lengthier runs of yesterday. It's always very timely, and it's just really, really funny. And if you've punched out of South Park years ago, I think you should punch back in and just jump in on the new season. It's really funny and really good.
I checked out. These are kind of horror adjacent, I guess. The Netflix Waco series. The 3-part series on Netflix.
Oh, yeah. That's on my to-watch pile, my mental to-watch pile. I really want to see that.
It's a good one. It's there's like serious, it's heavy, man. There's like some heavy shit in there for sure. I watched.
Does it like really tell you shit that you didn't know?
There's footage that's never been seen before in there. I mean, I knew the story, I knew the Timothy McVeigh connection. Like I knew about everything, but it gets more into the officers that were involved in the whole operation, and they talked to some of the other cult members and that sort of thing. There's a lot of footage, from that time, the siege, and it's really intense, man.
When that happened, I was 19, 20,
Yeah,
and I wasn't. I don't know. I think I was very caught up in my band at the time, Confusion, Plug. And I was, being a young kid, being a young person, and I was into hanging out and drinking beer and hanging out with my girlfriend and partying and going to junior college. I didn't think too much about that when that hit, Was that something you were extremely conscious of back then?
Yeah, I was like in my early 20s, so that was like the high point of me being into all that like apocalypse culture stuff and reading about Manson and serial killers and Waco and that whole anti-government conspiracy thing was like huge back then. Back then it was like fun. Now it's like a doomsday mainstream government thing, conspiracy theories, but back then it was like you felt like it was interesting, to hear about all these things and these crazy stuff that happens like in Texas with anti-government stuff. And, at the time you could have been like critical of the ATF with the way they handled the whole situation too, but also realizing what a scumbag this guy was for like having sex with kids and all this creepiness of his, religion, and then the insanity of him thinking that he's Jesus Christ. And that's like a fucking legend too, like.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely know a lot more now than I did then, and I definitely want to watch that, and I'm going to watch that.
Yeah.
Something else I watched, more kind of mystery stuff. Stella and I watched the OG Murder on the Orient Express. Did you ever see the original from the 70s?
Oh yeah, that's a classic, man.
Oh man, it's so good. Like, and it's so stacked with like, in my opinion, very, stars, so to speak, and like these very like 70s kind of icons, like Michael York is in there. And, it's just really cool to watch a movie that's so old that just completely holds my attention. Like it's 50 fucking years old. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like it's an amazing movie. And what's funny is that, I saw the remake from a few years ago, like
Right.
in the theater,
Mm-hmm.
which was pretty good, actually. I enjoyed it, but I didn't remember, and I won't give it away, even though it's not that big a deal to give it away, but I'm not going to give it away. I didn't remember who the killer was, but like we're watching it and Stella's like, well, I know who the killer is. And then maybe about 25 minutes left in the movie, I go, oh, wait a minute. And then like, she's like, yep, that's it, and I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm like, that's really cool though. Like how it all kind of ties together. But again, listeners, even though it's an old movie and it has been remade, I did not reveal the killer.
I should not. Now I want to see it again. That was a good one, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of star-studded casts, I saw Fear City, the Abel Ferrara film from the 80s.
Oh, wow. See, that's another one that's eluded me from the Abel Ferrara canon, man. I got to see that movie.
Star-studded, man. It's got Tom Berenger, Melanie Griffith, and Jack Scalia are in it, as well as some other
Jack
people.
Scalia.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that name in a long time.
Everyone's like really young, it came out in the 80s. Abel Ferrara was kind of like not quite, the man you think he turned into. He was breaking into doing, cool stuff. And just like a grimy New York, very much strains of 10 to Midnight in that movie.
Ah, okay.
You know what I mean? It's like there's a little bit of a similarity plot-wise to the film. But this is just grimier than 10 to Midnight. It was just dirtier. It's like New York City. It's just Abel Ferrara, just sleaze, naked women dancing on poles.
Yes. Where's that streaming?
I actually bought it. I bought the European Blu-ray of that, and it's a lot of money. The U.S. one's expensive, but the British one is like you can get like $24 or something like that.
Oh, very cool. Fear City. Wow, man. Even that title, it reminds me of video stores.
Yeah, hell yeah. But you can rent it though on Amazon for like cheap, because no one. It's the funny thing is, I think it's like $1 you can rent it. But if you wanted to buy a Blu-ray of this, it's like $400.
Yeah. See, the OG Orient Express is another one of those odd ones where it's for free on a bunch of platforms, but if you don't want to watch all those fucking commercials, it's like $1 or $1.99 kind of on Amazon, like one of those deals. It's not on any of the marquee streaming services, but it's out there,
Just one real quick thing is, I don't know if you knew this or not, but Terror in the Isles is on Blu-ray now.
Okay, I have Terror in the Isles as a bonus on one of my Halloween Blu-rays.
Really?
It's a bonus film. I think it's Halloween 2, dude. Well, I'm going to have to look and see because it's going to drive me nuts. But I do have a version of that somewhere, but it's nice to know that it's now standalone as well.
Yeah, because I got a couple of years ago, I tried to look for it and it was still out of print. And recently I was watching one of these horror YouTube channels that I follow, and they mentioned that it was now on Blu-ray. And it was,
awesome.
It's like $20 too. It's not like super expensive either.
I have to tell the listeners something. Okay, in the original Fly, the Vincent Price OG Fly, that scene with the dude's head and the spider's web, I can't watch that scene.
Yeah, it's disturbing. I can see that.
And because I saw that for the first time, and when I watched Terror in the Isles as a child, and I think it mentally murdered me, to quote Napalm Death. I'm not even kidding. I saw that scene completely unprepared at like 11 or 10 or something, right? And I never forgot it. And anytime that scene comes on, I turn into, I don't know, a 5-year-old girl. I don't know. Like I can't do it. Mike, isn't that hilarious?
Nah, man, you know, that stuff from our early childhood stays with you, you know, in a weird way, man. You know, and yeah, it makes sense that it still bothers you, you know.
I'm laughing about it because I have to laugh about it. But the scene in The Fly just fucks me up, and it brings me back to childhood when I was dipping my toes in horror and I was watching Terror in the Aisles, and I went, okay, uh, gotta go.
Well, you know, the movie we're talking about tonight beckons back to my childhood too, you know. But before we
Yes,
move
it
on to
does.
that, we got two more action items here.
We
First,
do.
I want to let everyone know about the voicemail system we have. We have
Mhm.
908. The call-in number is 908-913-0782. And we got another voicemail from Mike M. from Telford, Pennsylvania. Just checking in, calling in on his lunch break, telling us that we're doing a good job. You know, he does not want to have his voicemail played on the air, which I respect
Yeah,
that.
okay,
Totally
which is
cool.
fine. Yeah.
But yeah, man, he's a lot of kind words, man. I appreciate that. He also recommended us doing some stuff in the future and that we are going to be doing. There's some stuff that,
Yes, we are.
yeah, like, you know, for example, Death Dream was something that we've been talking about doing that for a while. That's going to come around. The films of Jim Van Bever, like we've covered some of his stuff, but that
Mhm.
stuff's out there. But he's a good listener, you know, really, really cool, supportive guy. And just want to shout out Mike M. from Telford, PA.
And one more time, Mike, let's give out that phone number.
Phone number is 908-913-0782. And if you can leave a voicemail, you know, if you want to have it played on the show, if you don't want to have it played on the show, say I don't want to have it played on the show, because otherwise we're just going to go ahead, post it on this thing, and Mike and I'll discuss it. You know, whatever you want. We're not looking fishing for compliments. If you don't like something, let us
No.
know. You know, we really just want to get interaction going. And if there is some suggestions that you guys want, for us to cover, we'll consider it. Especially if you leave a voicemail, we'll consider it. If it's something that we're interested in, and we're, you know, nothing like too far out that we're probably not interested in, you know. But we reserve veto status, so we can say no. But we will highly consider anything left in the voicemail as future episode coverage.
Exactly. We're final script approval here
Yeah,
at
there you go.
Necromaniac podcast. But folks, we are a part of a wonderful group of fellas, as they say, known as the Horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Right, Mike Hill?
That is correct.
And aside from this wonderful show that you're listening to right now, that has been on the air for 9 years and counting, listeners, Necromaniacs podcast, we have a bunch of wonderful friends that we feel you should check out too, right, Mike? And on Monday, who should they be checking out on Monday?
Of course, that's Brandon Legion's Horror Wolf 666. And his show, as you can guess by the name, is focused on horror. And he is a interview podcast.
Yes.
Old, new, up-and-comers, old school people, even some peripheral people like my buddy Paul Aloisio from Restless Spirit, who's a journalist. He's a horror movie journalist. He had him on as a guest. And of course, we're all over each other's shows too. So
That's right. I was on it not too long ago during the winter. I had a lovely time. Coming at you on Tuesday, the finest metal podcast in the land, Into the Necrosphere. Had a lovely time listening to the Cloak interview, Mike, on last week's episode.
Yeah, those guys are cool, man. We toured with them last year for a short run of dates. Nice guys, really sick band too. Sick band.
I really want to see them live, so I'm hoping they come back to New York. I've been kind of listening to them for a bit. I know that they've played Brooklyn and New York a few times, and I've never been able to catch them. And you know, I will finally catch them next time they come back. But yeah, Into the Necrosphere rules. If you like death metal, thrash metal, heavy metal, black metal, you should be listening to Into the Necrosphere. Coming at you on Wednesday, we have none other than the podcast that started it all, Mike Hill's own Everything Went Black. Right, Mike?
That's right. And definitely taking a lot of license with the format of that show over the last couple of years. So you can find a lot of different things on there. It's not just it's actually 50-50 music and other stuff, really. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's discussed on that show.
Yeah, sometimes even, film stuff and, different mixed bag every time on the old Everything Went Black. At Thursdays, you're listening to it right now, Necromaniacs podcast. It could be Mike and I. It could be Mike and Jeff. You never know what you're going to get each week, so you have to listen each week. On Fridays, what do we got, Michael?
We got Break the Apocalypse, which is brought to you all by Mike's brother, John Draper.
That's right. Sometimes they'll talk about some wrestling. It's usually about politics of the day or social issues of the day. You will laugh. You'll get a kick out of it. You'll enjoy it. Make sure you definitely check out Break the Apocalypse. On Saturday, spring is here. Go to the park. Go for a walk. Get some iced coffee, right? Have a lunch.
It's that time of year.
Do something like that. Go see a show, But on Sunday, make sure you return for none other than the Soul Knocks podcast.
Yeah, me and Carl are doing a collaboration right now. We're just kicked it off on his show, and it's called Darkness Weaves, and it's a exploration of the work of Carl Edward Wagner, who is a unfortunately obscure weird fiction and dark fantasy writer. But Carl and I are hoping to shed some light on this gem out there.
Oh, very cool, very cool. Speaking of writers, I'm about to start the new Mary San Giovanni book. She has a book from the Alien franchise, Mike.
Yes. I heard about that. I heard about it.
Alien, Enemy of My Enemy. I'm going to start that when I am done with my Dario Argento's Fear, his autobiography. I am enjoying the hell out of the Dario autobiography, Mike. It's you learn a lot about him that you probably did not know, and it's like since he wrote this book and it's translated into English, like I'm listening to it with an Italian accent in my head, speaking English. So it's kind of cool. Like honestly, that's how I'm really listening to this book. Like as I'm reading it, like it's taking me on a little bit of a journey. Growing up in Italy, but he grew up. Very interesting family. His family was like in the industry, and his mom was a famous photographer, and just really, interesting pre-directorial life. He was a movie reviewer for a while before he was a director. But yeah, it goes into all that kind of stuff, and I'm really enjoying it. I'll kind of be bummed when it's over.
That sounds interesting, man. I should check that out as well, for sure.
Yeah, it's called Fear. It's out there in hardcover. I mean, I paid $30 for it. I've seen it for more than that in some places. Severin Films is selling it. That's where I got my copy. So hopefully they still have it. This was a couple weeks back. My buddy Mark Yoshitomi alerted me that they were selling copies of it. Because I think it's a bit more on Amazon now, but readers, the Dario fans, if you haven't read it already, I completely, back the book if you want to check it out.
Right on, man. So let's go on to tonight's movie. And of course, we hinted at this earlier. It's a film called Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things.
I got to tell you, Mike, this is a movie that we sold at the Brooklyn Monster Factory. I remember the DVD cover from the aughts when this was available on DVD. But I will say, listeners, full disclosure, my watch for this episode of the podcast was my first time seeing this movie.
Really? Wow.
Yes, it was. I feel bad about that, but it is the truth. But yeah, a lot to say about this movie, a lot to say about its director, Bob Clark, who honestly, Mike, I mean, one of the most interesting directorial careers I've ever seen on paper. And, sadly, listeners, he lost his life on April 4th, 2007, when him and his son, Ariel Clark, who was only 22 at the time, were driving on the Pacific Coast Highway in Los Angeles. and were killed by a drunk driver.
Oh,
Mike,
it's terrible, man.
terrible ending to his life. Yeah.
Wow.
And quick of note is at the time he was working on the remake of, well, was about to start work on the remake of Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things, directed by him. So, what could have been, huh?
That's insane, man. I didn't know that was something he was working on or in pre-production.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yes. I kind of honestly, like, I even remember, like, again, before his death, like reading about maybe like a Morgue or a Fangoria, like that somebody, because that was, '07 was amidst the time of a bunch of the remakes, Mike, so it
Right.
almost kind of makes sense that I might have heard about it in maybe '05 or '06 when, listeners, as you can remember, if you were around back then, everything was literally being remade at that point. Then there was an attempt in 2010. Gravesend Film Enterprises confirmed that a remake would happen, but it never came to pass. We'll get into if that was a good idea or not. But on his career, many may know that he is the director of what I consider to be one of the greatest horror films of all time, Black Christmas. Many may know that he is the director of what many consider to be one of the greatest Christmas movies of all time, A Christmas Story. Some may not know that he's responsible for the Porky's franchise, Mike Hill. How about that?
Yeah, he's been kind of all over the map. He's not specifically a horror director, but one film I'd like to add to the horror list, though, is a film Death Dream, which is very intense movie. It's a riff on the whole monkey's paw thing. It's like an anti-war, like Vietnam era film. Very powerful movie, man. And I think we have not talked about it yet, but we definitely should cover that movie. It's great.
Yeah, Death Dream is sandwiched in between Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things and Black Christmas. So,
yeah.
And then also around that time period is Deranged, which is a fantastic movie. He was the executive producer on that, but he had a hand in that movie. He also did Turk 182 for you mid-'80s fans out there. He directed the 1991 cult hit Popcorn, which is a pretty cool movie, actually, itself. Actually, no, he's the executive producer on Popcorn. Sorry, not director. Then, in the strangest turn of all, he is responsible for the Baby Geniuses franchise of the late 90s aughts. He directed Baby Genius and Baby Genius 2, which made money. So, unbelievable. And again, right before his death, he was an executive producer on the '06 Black Christmas. Again, ridiculous career, huh, Mike?
Oh, yeah, man. It's a very prolific output this guy has, for sure.
To have a hand in what a lot of people think is the birth of the slasher, he's there at the birth of the teen sex comedy. It's very interesting. It's like, wow, like, I think, if I don't think this exists, but I would love to see a movie about this guy, documentary or something. I mean, I don't think that exists, but I almost feel like just because of all the things he touched alone, it's just kind of so fascinating as a film nerd,
Yeah, no doubt, man. And actually, this movie was co-written with Alan Ormsby, the star of the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
A buddy of Bob Clark's, who also had his hand in the Porky's franchise, Ormsby.
Yep.
Yeah, and Popcorn. He directed Popcorn, Ormsby, actually. So yeah, lifelong friend of Clark's. Also had his hand in Death Dream. I mean, that's his filmmaking buddy, Mike.
Well, so this came out in 1972. And is 87 minutes long, so it's like a very lean and mean film.
Yeah, budget of only $50,000. I could not find any box office information on this movie. I imagine it was rather small, though. What do you think?
Probably. I mean, this movie probably really hit its stride like a decade later in home video. I imagine.
In home video, yeah, yeah, you're right. I mean, I remember the box as a kid at the video store. It's funny. The sentence "I remember the box" literally like almost means nothing to a whole generation of our fans. It's like saying I remember the box squarely puts you in a certain time and place, Mike. You know what I'm saying?
I think about that all the time, man. How
Yeah.
that's just almost irrelevant these days to people. Like that
Well,
experience is nothing that anyone can relate to in a younger
if
generation.
we have any listeners in their 20s, okay, saying something like "I remember the box" means you remember the box cover at the video store. And yeah, it had like a really odd box. Like it matched like the movie poster. You kind of didn't know what it was. This movie is definitely an early horror comedy. Um, and that to me works. You know, I mean, I can be very critical of the horror comedy, and I know you can too, Mike. But this is like an example of a real early one that I think definitely hits the marks and keeps you interested. And then, of course, at the very end of the film, there's no comedy to be found whatsoever, and goes into the pits of hell. But we'll get to that too.
Well, and that's really what makes it even like more intense, man. I mean, I saw this movie when I was a kid on television. Okay, so that probably is another way that somehow they make money is these well, I'm sure it was a edited version that was showing on like Chiller Theater or something like that.
Oh wow!
Yeah, because Channel 5, Channel 9, and Channel 11 had
yes,
like on Saturdays there was like horror film stuff going on those three channels in the tri-state area, and I saw it at a very young age on television, and the comedy part at that time was lost on me a little bit, but that the ending of the film is what was one of those scenes that's just creeps me out to this day. And and
absolutely.
And rewatching it all this time later, I think still very powerful actually.
Watching it for the first time, I got like, in a good way, Scooby-Doo vibes from the beginning of this movie, Mike.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I could see that. Definitely.
Like Scooby-Doo horror vibes, because it's 1972. It was probably filmed in 71 or 72, and they are dressed like it's 1971, 72. It is like, obscenely 70s style. As I'm watching it, I'm almost like going, I'm so envious that a man could dress like that and get absolutely no guff. This is just what young people looked like. Isn't that like mind blowing, Mike?
Yeah,
like
everyone's real groovy, in the movie for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's just modern dress of its day. And I mean, to me, more so than the 60s, or even more so than the 80s, the 70s was just like, whoa, it's kind of not surprising how some people regard it as some of the ugliest outfits of the day. But to me, I'm just watching it almost with a sense of jealousy that a grown man could wear that clothes, and everybody around him is okay, and he's not getting mocked, and he's with attractive women, Michael.
Oh,
so
yeah.
it was almost I was envious, Mike. Let's be honest.
I could feel that as well, Mike.
Yeah. Let's get to the cast here. As we said, directed and written by Bob Clark, screenplay by Alan Ormsby, produced by Clark, Gary Goach, and Peter James. But the cast is, once again, Alan Ormsby as Alan. You're going to sense a theme here, folks. Valerie Monchez as Val, Jeff Gillen as Jeff, Anya Ormsby as Anya, Paul Cronin as Paul, and we have Jane Daly as Terry, Roy Engelman as Roy, Robert Phillip as Emerson, Alec Baird as the caretaker, and Seth Sklarkey as Orville Dunworth, who basically has a tremendous part of this movie, Orville. That's, we'll get to it. Evil Dead vibes, Mike Hill, in the sense that apparently, much like Evil Dead, this movie was also loaded with college friends and friends of the director and producer, which is pretty cool, huh?
Yes, and there's also some plot elements to this that are similar to Evil Dead as well.
Oh, totally. I mean, while I don't know that Raimi was a fan of this movie, I have a funny feeling he might have been a fan of this movie or saw this movie. This movie is literally 10 years exactly prior to Evil Dead, and there are some similarities, you know, in the behind the scenes sense that I just mentioned, and a little bit in the plot, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a group of, I couldn't really quite ascertain. I think they were actors. This group of friends.
Yeah, they're theater troupe.
They're theater troupe.
They're stage actors. Yes.
They take a boat to an island where it's known that criminal types were buried there. Okay, and
off the coast of Miami, because I believe it is off. I believe it was also shot off the coast of Miami.
Down in Florida. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the this is the interesting part, because most of the friends think it's kind of like they're having a piss with this whole thing, like they're having fun. But I think Alan from the get-go had nefarious ideas about this whole thing.
Yes, and okay. Aside from there's definite Evil Dead vibe. Talking about putting the movie in its time and place, it's shot in the post Manson era, listeners. And you get the feeling, I think, maybe 20, 25 minutes into the movie, that perhaps maybe Bob Clark and Alan Ormsby were somewhat influenced by that whole kind of vibe. Because, Alan, who's kind of the ringleader, theater troupe head, has, I guess, mini Manson vibes or Manson light vibes, right, Mike?
Manson light, because he wasn't trying to his idea wasn't to go and murder the elite, but it was about raising the dead and witchcraft, basically the occult.
Yeah, and he's a ringleader, and he kind of talks down to everybody, and he's got the pretty women around him, and there's definitely some post Manson-esque things going on. And of note, the girl Anya in the cast is played by his then wife, Anya Ormsby, hence having the same last name.
Yeah. And but this part is we're in the comedy part of this film. The comedy segment of the film. However, it's dark though still. Like even the humor is dark, and
it is.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like funny like when you watch like Shaun of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
There's like a wink and like a there's an irony that they use. But in this one, the comedy is, there's a dark undertone to everything that's going on, because essentially what they're doing is they're exhuming a body, which is Orville Dunworth. I almost said Orville Dunwich, but yeah.
Yeah, Orville Dunworth.
And they're, dressing him up in, women's clothes and things like that. And not
they're really
clothes, but
desecrating. It's honestly, it's almost shockingly the desecration of a dead body, almost shockingly, to the point where you're laughing, because there's a lot of one-liners, and actually all the women in this movie are humorous. They say the most humorous lines, I almost feel like. Not so much actually his wife, Anya. She is the one who's very kind of like intense and kind of scenery chewing.
Yeah.
But the other girls, Val and Jane Daly as Terry, they're really kind of taking the piss a bit on Alan, and they're not really taking him all that seriously. And there's some definitely witty things happening. But Mike is right. It's still quite dark. There's very kind of creepy music going on a lot.
Yeah, score.
And of course, it's 1972, listeners. It's got the 70s creep vibe. It does, right?
Absolutely, man. And Anya is like kind of like the squeaky foam of the group,
Yeah, right. But you like these people. I kind of like the whole crew, which I thought was cool. And to me, again, the sign of a director barely into his career. It's the third movie he's ever made, by the way. He did make 2 movies prior to this movie, and they are The Emperor's New Clothes, which was a short, and a movie called She-Man from 1967. So, this is about a cross-dresser. So Bob Clark is, Jesus Christ, what a pioneer. I mean, a 67 movie about a cross-dresser, number one, and he's delving into horror by 1972. with Alan Ormsby, who again in the cast, one of the stars of the movie. And he's kind of like putting out a horror comedy in a time when, let's just say, none of the horror movies were comedic, Mike, at this point, right?
No, I mean, if you think about it, just a few years before this, we had Night of the Living Dead, another zombie film, which was like dead serious. Like there really was very little any humor in that movie.
No, I mean, and the end of this movie goes into that is it's got to be completely Romero inspired. The ending, and we'll get to that. But literally, the first hour and change of this movie is almost kind of hijinks, Mike. Right?
Yeah, but one of the things that in the second time I watched this when I was a kid, and I watched it just like during the week or whatever, and the thing that I was thinking about, the vibe I got was. Alan's character is he half expects something to happen when he goes out there. You get this sense that okay, we're this acting troupe. We're going to go out onto this island, this creepy island. We're going to go into this house. We're going to dig up this body, desecrate it. We're going to do some rituals, do some witchcraft, But he's probably read his like. Occult background on everything and his like, okay, This is like what should happen. All right. Do I really think it's going to happen? Probably not. But in the back of his mind, I think that he is like, I want something to happen, even though he thinks something might not happen. And that's the vibe I got from Alan. But everyone else is just there along for a good time,
And as you're watching it, the initial attempt to, quote, raise the dead does not happen. Nothing happens. And they're kind of defeated. It is only when they do it, like later on, things start happening, because it seems like, as a viewer, you're like, well, where's this movie going to go? The dead have not been raised. They're just kind of like joking around the cabin, like really doing fucked up things to a dead body, the Orville dead body, which I have to say, for 1972 super indie film, pretty damn good makeup, no?
I was just going to say the zombies look great, and also just the set dressing looks awesome too, man. Like they got like this this really great atmosphere. It reminds me of that Mighty Sphincter video, Ghost Walk. I don't know if you ever saw that video.
No.
Yeah, there's that band Mighty Sphincter from Arizona, and they're like this goth rock band, like goth punk band, that they have a video called Ghost Walk, and it reminds the imagery in this movie reminds me of this video. It's like smoke machines, graves, that kind of stuff.
Ghost Walk is also the name of a great Brian Keane book. Interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, since nothing happens, Alan starts kind of abusing all of his pals in the cabin. But as luck would have it, the dead do start coming back to life and start killing some of the pals and some of the friends who are, outside. And it kind of kills. It doesn't kill the main characters first. It kills some of the more ancillary characters first, right, Mike?
Right. Except Orville is not reanimated.
No,
he's still quite dead. Quite dead.
He is. He's still in the cabin with everybody, and they're fucking around with him. And I will say, gotta say, pretty disturbing things doing to a dead body by a bunch of college kids. You know what I'm saying? It's just kind of like a weird vibe. Kind of, again, darkness. For a comedy. So all this chaos is ensuing outside as the zombies are coming to life, and it looks really good. It's definitely inspired, I think, and informed by Night of the Living Dead. But since this is not in black and white, and it's 4 years later, and the 70s are creepier than the 60s, it has just this really eerie vibe to it when the dead are coming out of the graves with the music and this primitive kind of like hellscape vibe. That's what I thought.
Yeah, very effective. And also I have to say the zombies also had a bit of an Italian look about them too.
Oh shit. I knew we were going to go there.
Yeah.
This movie also reminds me of Zombie.
Yeah.
And it's years and years before Zombie. Like, it's about 9 years before Zombie was probably filmed. And I don't know if Fulci saw this movie. Who the fuck knows? Again, I don't know how many people saw this movie at all initially, because there is no video market. Even like the video market begins 10 years after this movie has been released. So I would say it's probably coincidental, the Fulci-esque vibe. What do you think? Do you think it's coincidental or no?
I mean, there's very very unlikely this film made it to Europe, in the 70s, and that's the tripped out thing when you think about these types of films. Even Raw Meat, the movie we covered a couple of weeks ago, it's like when that came out, the only way you could see it is in a theater or at a drive-in,
Even at the end, there's something that which we'll get to that made me think of Fulci's Zombie. The very end of the movie.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about, but yeah.
Either
you saw it at a theater or a drive-in, or it was on television. Like some edited version.
Saw it.
Yeah, but I mean, it would be with commercials and on TV, like how I saw it when I was a kid.
Right.
And maybe most likely edited.
True. Just goes to show you how really ahead of the curve this movie was. So as I was saying, the zombies are coming back to life. They attack the cabin, and our heroes, our Scooby-Doo crew, are quite shocked that the zombies literally are back to life, because I think they thought it was, kind of a bust, huh?
Yeah, and they honestly, the group really didn't think anything was going to happen. That's my feeling, is that they were like, we're going to go out here and smoke weed and hang out and probably get laid, and play around with this dead guy, and like that's the extent of it. It was just like some crazy thing to do when you're a kid, and rage, but oh my God, the friggin' dead are rising,
There is one more effort to return the zombies to the grave. And at one point, that appears to work as the zombies, walk away from the cabin and go into the forest. But apparently, what they were supposed to do at the end of this last-ditch effort was return Orville to his grave, too, so that the zombies would not come back. And, of course, they don't do that. They're still fucking around with this dead body, and all of the zombies come back and attack the cabin once again and start killing off our friends one by one, until the only two survivors at this point are Alan and Anya. Something to note of Anya that has happened amidst all this is that she really kind of starts believing in like the darkness and the dark magic of the island and all the things that they have done, huh?
Yeah, she's on board with what's going on because she's seeing it unfold in front of her,
And I think she starts seeing visions, and I remember she spent some time inside the coffin. Like, she took it all really, really seriously and kind of continued to take it seriously, even when the zombies initially didn't come back to life and everybody thought Alan was, full of shit and whatnot. But she was kind of a true believer throughout it all. And again, Alan and Anya are a real life couple at this point. And there's this really fucked up scene where the zombies are coming after them, and they're on the stairwell. They're trying to get upstairs, and Alan pushes her into the zombies and just offers her as a fucking offering, like, fuck this bitch, kind of fucking throw her down the stairs, and they start ripping her apart. It was just like, oh man, that's fucked up. It must have been a rough scene to do in real life, huh?
Probably, yeah. I mean, it's a physical kind of thing, Now, this leads us to the most powerful part of the film, if you ask me.
Yeah.
All right, and this is the one that haunted me my entire life from the age of 9 or 10 or whenever I saw this movie. So Alan goes into the room where Orville is stationed on the bed, and
yeah, he thinks he's in a room by himself and the door is locked and he has some kind of relief from the zombie attack.
Yeah, he boards himself up. They're on the outside. He thinks he's safe, but lo and behold, who rises from the grave or from the bed? From the bed,
yeah.
is Orville.
Orville.
And it's done in such an awesome way, man. It's like slow motion. There's like first you see this like shadow cast over Alan, and then it's curtains for Alan.
Yeah, and the zombies break through the door, and it's got this fucked up music, and Alan's screaming, and again, there's no more comedy left in this movie in the last 15, 20 minutes of this movie. There's no more, ha-has left. And the movie gets pitch dark, and the movie just ends where, like, Alan's on the floor and the zombies are piling on top of him with Orville, and it's got that 70s crawl, like the credits crawl, right, Mike?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the Fulci part that comes at the end.
Yeah. Right after that, the camera cuts to a bunch of the zombies slowly ascending onto the dock where the boat was, getting onto the dock, and the boat leaving the dock with about 10 to 12 zombies on it. And it immediately brought to mind how all the zombies made their way into Manhattan. And we see them on the Brooklyn Bridge at the end of Fulci's Zombie. And like I said, listeners, this comes out in 72. Zombie doesn't come out in America until, I believe, 80. Maybe even people really see it in like 81. And it's just kind of like amazing how, again, I got to chalk it up to coincidental, Same for the Evil Dead, maybe not. There's a chance Raimi saw this movie and was a fan of this movie. I'd have to do a little more research there. Listeners, if you know either or the zombie potential connection or potential Evil Dead influence, please let us know. But to me, it made this movie even more great.
Oh yeah, dude, totally. And now the one thing that was never really established in the film is, okay, we have these zombies going into Miami, right? It was never established if the bite of a zombie would spread the zombiehood to the person who got bitten. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's no talk. There's no talk of zombie spread. There's no talk of, will you turn into a zombie? Which brings to mind the term ghoul in this movie.
Yes.
They're zombies because they've come out of the dead and they're reanimated and they're looking to eat you. Okay? But they're killing all these people. They're not making new ones. And that to me is like, I don't know, like the word ghoul kept popping into my head in this movie. But I still do think this is a zombie movie, though. If you asked me if it belongs among the zombie canon, I think it does. What about you?
100%. I mean, there's different types of zombie movies. There's going all the way back to the voodoo zombie. Then there's like the Walker style zombie, which may or may not have like a biological component to it. There's like supernatural zombies, which I would say these are more of like a supernatural zombie.
Mm. I mean, yeah, it's a movie that's really ahead of its time. Again, I could see probably early 70s audiences maybe not being so blown away by this initially, but this becoming a movie that I think down the line people saw and were like, wow, this, Bob Clark was really onto a couple of ideas here, way ahead of the curve, and made a really interesting fucking indie horror movie for like 50 grand with his buddies that is being talked about, 50 years later. And I think in 50 more years, people will still talk about this movie, Mike.
I agree. And also just people in that time frame, like they, these types of movies were like kind of looked down on by people. Like, just like if you were into this kind of stuff, you're like some kind of degenerate or something,
Mm.
Like the whole like drive-in vibe was like kind of like a lowbrow thing,
So apparently it was released as a special edition DVD in 2007 from VCI. That's the one we carried at the store, okay? And it was the first time it was uncut. It had a really weird, wonky cover, though, I remember. Like, a lot of those covers from the O's were kind of shitty.
Yeah.
Apparently, it was also a briefly made VHS through Anchor Bay Entertainment. Finally, jumped to 2016 on February 23rd, 2016. VCI released the film on Blu-ray, which is, I believe you could still get that one today, and it is uncut. But yeah, like I said at the start of the show, there was a planned remake of this movie before Bob Clark's death, and even after his death, it was apparently at some kind of stage, but it never came to pass. Now, I'm going to say something. As much as I love this movie, and I did, completely ripe for remake. What do you think?
It would have been even better if Bob Clark did the remake, but I could
I
see that,
know.
you know. But
Yeah.
then again, a very special filmmaker would have to do this film, you know.
Mm, yeah. I almost think I mean, there wouldn't even be a lot you'd have to change. Like, I almost feel like I could almost picture a modern version of this movie in a way with a very similar script and idea with this very fucked up bleak ending, you know?
Yeah, I just the thing that concerns me is the treatment of comedy in
Mm,
you know,
mm.
in the film. You know what I mean? Like how would that play in the modern world? You know what I mean? With like the kind of
And,
stuff
and
that
it would
they
be, yeah. And the dead body desecration, which again is something that you really need to watch to get where I'm really, getting at here. It is kind of fucked up. Like, I feel like some modern audiences might not be down with that aspect,
but I
but they
think
could change that.
yeah, but I'm down. I think that's crucial to the film though, really, the desecration, you know. You know who
Yeah.
would play a great Alan is
Mm.
Owen Campbell. Do you know who that is?
Ah,
You remember
okay.
him? The guy
Yes.
from My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That would be interesting.
That guy I think he's a cool actor, man. He was in a movie I saw a few months ago called Candyland, and
Mm.
he was really good in that too.
You know what? It's cool that this movie has been untouched and stands on its own, and it's a Bob Clark movie. As we know, they've remade Black Christmas several times to mixed results. Uh, there's no clamor to remake Porky's, but who knows at this point? Somebody could remake Porky's and restart the teen sex comedy that has been dormant for a little while. Um, there was the abominable Christmas Story sequel from last Christmas season that I saw, which was horrible, horrible movie. It was on HBO Max. Listeners, if you saw that one, I'm sure you would agree how bad it was. But yeah, Bob Clark is definitely, like, to me, a legendary, prolific, uh, diverse director who should be remembered.
Yeah, I mean, I love his horror too. I mean, and that's the thing. He's kind of successful in all these different genres that he works in, you know. But I mean, for me
No,
personally,
yeah.
I love the horror films, you know.
It is hilarious. He's the baby genius guy. Like, where, how does that even happen? Like, it's just wow. Like, like, you made one of the best horror films of all time. It's like wild.
What's really interesting too is to look at just the time frame of from 1968 of Night of the Living Dead, this film in
Hmm.
72,
Hmm.
Evil Dead, and Zombie. You know, just like
Yeah.
you can kind of connect all those films as being the kind of grandfathers of the genre. Really, this is it kind of started there. If you think about all the elements of zombie movies, really came from here. And I'm going to name this as a film that's important in that canon of movies for sure.
It is. I'm just wondering, like, who got to see this movie? Like, I almost feel like at one point it was almost like a lost movie. Um, but I feel like the fact that it did make its way, in the DVD boom onto DVD, and it's on Blu-ray. It's out there if you want to see it. Um, Wonder what could have been had the remake happened, Mike. Like what, like the even more kind of eyes on this film at that point in time.
We might never know, man. You know.
We'll never know, man. Some asshole drunk driver killed Bob Clark and his son, so we'll never know,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
Um, what do you give Children Shouldn't Play with Dead Things on our Necromaniacs score of 1 to 5?
I'm going to give it a 4.5 out of 5 because two reasons. Number one, I feel like this is like very important within the zombie genre, and it gives me those feels from back when I was a kid, man. You know, just like the terror of watching this movie. Even the comedy, like I said, at the age that I saw it, the comedy didn't come off as funny. It just came off as disturbing, like when I was a kid. You know.
Right, right, right. I gave it the same score. I love this movie. I think it's great. I think everyone listening should see it if you haven't seen it. You know, it clicks a lot of the boxes for me. I am a sucker for creepy 70s movies. When it's a creepy 70s movie I've never seen, it makes it even better. You know?
Yeah, man.
I was almost surprised at how much I like this movie. Yeah, a very nice 4.5. Fucking Bob Clark rules. I mean, you know, there's yet to be a movie that I've seen of his that I have not enjoyed, and I think I'm going to make it my business to see all the shit of his that I haven't seen yet. So he even did some stuff on TV in the 80s. He did an episode of Amazing Stories. Remember Amazing Stories?
I remember that. I didn't realize he did anything with that though. Interesting.
He wrote an episode of Dukes of Hazzard.
Oh, okay.
You know, he got around.
Well, hell yeah, man. That's definitely check this out, and you know, stay in touch with us. Let us know what you think of everything. Check us out on all the social media, Instagram, Facebook. You know, and yeah, give us a 5-star review if you dug this, and we'll see you next.
Please do.
Time. Yeah.
Yes, and there'll be more Bob Clark in the future on Necromaniacs podcast. We will see you next time, listeners.
Take care.
Took a picture from the frame, and though you're nothing like you seem, your shadow fell like last night's rain.